Hey everyone, and welcome to Game Explain's Year in Review, where now that we've reached the end of 2020, it's time to look back on the entirety of the year, specifically as it applies to Nintendo. So this is going to be coming in two halves. For the first half of the discussion, we'll be discussing everything up to July, and then the part two will be discussing from July to the end of the year. So there's going to be a lot for us to cover, especially because this year is, I don't know, this year's been just a little weird. I don't know if you guys know what I mean by this, but I just noticed today, like I looked out my window and there's like this weird moon coming in too. I don't know what's going on. Is the world ending or something? I don't know.
That moon's going to hit on January 1st, 2021, and everyone's going to say 2021 sucks. So, yeah.
I mean, I think if the world just ended, I think that would be a net gain over 2020. So.
Wow, so cynical.
I know. What can I say? Alright, so let's go ahead and get into, before we get into our monthly breakdown of all the major things that happened this year for Nintendo, let's just give our overall thoughts on Nintendo in 2020. What did we think of this year in general, whether it applies to their major game releases or just news or anything you want to discuss? What were your overall thoughts about Nintendo in 2020? Let's start off with you, Chris. What did you think?
2020, it was a strange year overall, and the same can be said, I think, for Nintendo. But I feel like sometimes, like for me personally, it's my natural inclination at the end of the year just to think, that wasn't a very good year. Like there weren't, next year will be better. But there were some really great game releases this year, actually, especially I think in the second half. And it really shifted my perspective on Nintendo in 2020 a lot. But there are still certain things about the year that I still find strange. Like, for example, we didn't really have a normal Nintendo Direct this year, and Nintendo started announcing their games in different ways. And it'll be interesting to see kind of how that progresses moving forward. And just things like that are so strange and weird yeah, so it was a weird year, but we did get some great games. I'm excited to talk about it though, for sure.
Okay. How about you, Joey? What did you think?
Yeah, I'm with Chris on this. It was a strange year. I don't think it was the worst year for the Nintendo Switch, especially. I felt like 2018 was kind of just a drag up until Smash came out, but that's just my opinion. But 2020, at least, we got a steady flow of releases, especially near the end, when it just felt like, for one, after Animal Crossing, it felt like Nintendo was just silent for a while. Yeah. And that was absolutely frustrating. It's not that we were mad that they weren't releasing games. We were mad because, at least I was mad because they were silent. They didn't tell us anything. And
it felt like they went on their own little island destination vacation.
yeah, exactly. So it was kind of just like we wanted them to just say, hey, COVID really has affected us. Like, we don't expect releases from us for a while. But it was just no communication whatsoever. And I felt like that was the most frustrating part of this year. But like near the end, like starting around the time the first Partner Direct came out, that was when they finally just started to tell us what was going on. That's when they finally just started to say, here's the games you can expect. Some of the Partner Directs were disappointing, but then they kept getting better and better and better. But I really hope like real Nintendo Directs come back next year, because I feel like a Partner Direct every month would just be anticlimactic.
It is pretty wild, though. Yeah, we didn't have a proper Nintendo Direct this year at all. We had a variety of Nintendo Directs, none of the ones that people typically look forward to.
Yeah.
Tom, though, what did you think about all this?
Well, this year, definitely you could sense that Nintendo was impacted, like Joey was saying. And for me, I would say it's a solid year. They had a lot of great games out. Not all of them ones that I would like to necessarily play, like Animal Crossing. And when the number one game you're looking forward to, maybe Super Mario 3D All-Stars, ends up being more of a straight port. It's a little bit disappointing, but it's still fun. And definitely, Nintendo adjusted, got used to it at the end of the year, and really picked up steam. And we'll just see if that's going to be the course going forward, or if it was only a one-time thing.
Wait, Nintendo's on Steam now?
No,
Picked
up Steam. No, they didn't buy Steam.
Maybe they can make Half-Life now.
Yeah.
What did you think this year, Tris?
So, I think it's really obvious when Nintendo was hit this year by everything with the pandemic, but I think what it really hit was in the marketing. And I think that's why we went so much a spring with, like, minimal marketing. Especially if you look at how Nintendo handled things in Japan versus in Europe versus in the US. It was in the US where it was mostly quiet. Which makes sense given how... Yeah. But even beyond that, I think when you get past the unfortunate silence that they had to have for a while, the game releases this year were actually really strong. And despite everything this year, the Nintendo releases were probably among the strongest parts of this year. Which, sure, not a high bar with what this year was, but I think we had some really big titles that, had they released any other year, it might be considered one of the best years for Nintendo.
Think so?
Yeah, I think so. I think if it was any other year, coupled with, you know, no internal delays, I think this would have been one of their best years with the Switch. I mean, Animal Crossing alone, sales-wise, proved that, I think.
Yeah. Nintendo is so lucky that they had Animal Crossing when they did. I wonder if they were thinking of lucky stars that they chose to delay it. I mean, who knows how things might have turned out otherwise, but having that at literally the very beginning of the pandemic, as everyone's going to lockdown and quarantine, you know, we said it before, we're not the only ones saying it, but like that was such remarkable timing for Nintendo. Like, it came at the right time for the company and for everyone, where it provided this, you know, this island escape to kind of like get away from the real world, which offered a great way to meet up with your friends and family virtually in a time when we couldn't otherwise. And yeah, it was just kind of magical. And that game, with how content rich it is, with its ongoing schedule, you know, kind of basically carried Nintendo the first half of this year. And you know, it kept, even though I've fallen off the wagon, I'm sure we'll have more to say about Animal Crossing later on once it gets to its release. You know, it still maintained most people's interest, I would say, for minimum month, probably a few months at the least. And yeah, it just kind of like filled a gap at just the right time. And it's difficult to talk about 2020 without like calling out Animal Crossing, just how perfect that timing was, and probably really saved Nintendo's bacon this year, especially because there seemed to be a pretty big gap after that, between that and the next original release. And one thing I wanted to bring up, though, is it did seem like this year, this has been the case for a few years now, but this year also seemed to be a little heavy on, you could say, ports or maybe remakes. I think at least 3 of these games were ports or remakes of previous games, with all the rest being, you know, basically sequels or a spin-off. I think Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity might be possibly the most original game here, and even that is, you know, a combination of just, you know, Warriors and Breath of the Wild, which is novel, not to undermine that. But there wasn't a whole lot of the way in like a really original IPs this year, and by that I mean really weren't any. I also count Clubhouse Games 51, which existed on the DS before, and you know, it's 51 games that already exist. But that's also another game that came out at just the right time, which again we'll get into later on. But yeah, interesting year. It did have some strong points, but I think what this year might have been lacking was like a major tentpole title outside of Animal Crossing. Like I think Age of Calamity kind of stepped up to fill in that role, but I don't know if that was quite the game that everyone was, you know, that at least I myself would have been looking for, because Warriors aren't quite my style. That feels more like a spin-off game. It would have been like a great supportive title, whereas we didn't have like that major tentpole holiday release. But maybe that's just me. So,
do you think we could have gotten Breath of the Wild 2 this year?
Oh man, that is so tough. I think it was a remote possibility, but I wouldn't have bet on it though. So I think
we would have seen something from it this year had everything played out right and normal this year. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's another point which we'll get to. No E3, so yeah. All right. Well, those are our overall thoughts. Let's get into the monthly breakdown here and what exactly happened month by month, and then we can just touch on whatever we thought was of relevance or things we want to bring up. So for January, not necessarily a whole lot, but there were some big announcements. We had pretty early into the month the Pokemon Direct, in which we learned the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX. It was announced for release later in the year. Then we got news of the expansion passes being Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra for Pokemon Sword and Shield. And then they also announced the Pokemon Home, which is a transfer app to get your Pokemon between mobile and Switch, or transfer them between mobile and Switch. Basically an updated version of Pokemon Bank, I believe. Yep. Right, yeah. And then after that, the other big announcement of the month was we had a Smash Brothers reveal. The first of, I believe, 4 this year, which looking Byleth now feels so long ago. And I'm like, wow, were there really 4 this year? There were. So this was on January 16th. We didn't know who it was before. There was no hints or anything given. And then, of course, ended up being a Fire Emblem character. And then the update eventually hit on January 28th. So, yeah, what do we think of January so far?
Next.
Just move on, pass.
I think it was bold to start with too many presentations in the year. Like, instead of what people predicted of, oh, they'll do like a big Nintendo Direct in mid-January or early February to kind of show what they have for the year. Instead, they did two specific presentations in the year, which I think they probably didn't intend for it, but it pretty much set the standard for the rest of the year, doing it this way.
Yeah. It kind of did. It did kind of set like a baseline expectation, I think.
Yeah.
And it ended up kind of working out in a pandemic year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So were people hyped after those Pokemon announcements, or?
I was personally. Pokemon Sword and Shield are like up there among my favorites in the series, and I was slowly dreading the idea of, oh, are they really gonna do a third version and, you know, have to play through the whole game again and all that stuff, but no. They did the expansion patch, which I think was the most modern way to go about that Pokemon third version kind of thing, and, you know, where they add even more content, and I think that was handled decently well, and I'm glad it was received relatively well in terms of the announcements. People were excited for that. And then, to go into Byleth, I hated Byleth's trailer, because it was just dumb, but Byleth flies through the air with the weapons around them. I don't think that happens in Fire Emblem. But I thought as a character, they're actually pretty fun. I think they're one of the more fun Fire Emblem characters in the game, to be honest.
They definitely stand out a bit more than some of the others. Yeah, at least they weren't a clone or, you know, based on, you know, you had a moveset based on an existing character. They actually did feel like they had the usual amount of attention that the DLC characters tend to, which is good. It's just that you see the Fire Emblem thing, you know, starting the year, it's like, really, another Fire Emblem character? Come on. Watch the next Final 3 are all going to be Fire Emblem characters.
Yeah, I think it also didn't... also the fact that this character was announced during... Like, we didn't know who the character was or what series they were representing leading up to this Sakurai presentation. And so I think that also added to the anticipation of it. Like, oh, who's it going to be? We're going to get this whole showcase right after we find out who it is. And so it sort of added, I think, to the disappointment for some people and to the excitement for others. But I do think it was fun anticipating who it could be, knowing nothing about it leading up to the Sakurai Presents itself.
Right. Yeah, it's like you announce this character like the dead last, like the Challenger Pack 1, like the last character when you also announced Banjo-Kazooie. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah, that was...
Order's a little strange there, yeah.
Yeah, that was the most disappointing thing. Like, normally you want to maybe save the best for last, but no, they had... I guess if they figured if they had a Fire Emblem character sooner, that might lower people's expectations. Maybe less people would buy it.
True.
Although it was... Like, I like the expanding sword, kind of like Ivy from Soul Calibur, so that was a neat take.
Yeah, that's what I had thought of too.
Maybe they're just like, you know what? Let's get the Fire Emblem character out of the way, and then we're just gonna have a bunch of hits after this, non-stop. Yeah. Although some people might argue whether Steve is a hit or not. Steve's been pretty divisive when
MinMin
when it happened.
I didn't care about MinMin.
Oh man! All right. Well, we'll get into that later on. So, all right. Any other thoughts on January? I think those are the two only major things. So.
I guess to touch upon Mystery Dungeon, though I only got to play the demo of that, and that was my first experience with the Mystery Dungeon game. I thought that was a really big, nice announcement because I know people have been wanting a new Mystery Dungeon game for years now that returned to like the original format, and I think people really loved that they did this, and I don't think anyone really expected them to do it either. So it's kind of nice when Pokemon, a company that more and more in recent years has been doing a lot of spin-offs, though mostly mobile spin-offs. It's nice when they revisit some of the more popular ones, I think.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's actually a good point.
I was going to say, did you say mobile or MOBA spin-offs?
Both.
Yeah, I did see. Yeah, it did seem like a lot. Actually, this year had a couple of nice announcements for Pokemon spin-off fans.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was actually good to see that people were excited by that. I know, Mystery Dungeon's not quite my style, but it's awesome to see people like get what they want.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people were expecting an update to that series anytime soon, and that did kind of come out of nowhere.
Yeah, it did.
Although I will add to that, I think the Pokemon Home announcement also, at least to me, seemed a little out of nowhere too. Because we had already just established a Pokemon Bank seemingly not that long ago, but It was a few years ago at this point, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I remember, didn't they introduce like a different payment method or something for home, or you had to? There was something. I'm trying to remember what the controversy was over this. I remember there was something. Do you remember, Triss, at all? Like how they?
I don't remember there being much controversy over it, because I believe it was the payment methods were fairly straightforward, similar to Bank. I think it was just people were upset that it's separate from Pokemon Bank.
I think that was it, right? Yeah, like it's another payment on top of Bank, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's just, why can't Pokemon just make things simple? They gotta complicate things and they don't need to be complicated.
Just a little bit.
Do they not make enough money over there at TPC? Come on. All right. Well, let's go and move on to February then, in which we had a big Animal Crossing New Horizons Direct, provided a massive overview of what we could expect in the game. And they also revealed an Animal Crossing Switch, which was pretty cool. We actually, if I remember correctly, I think we actually got one. I think we covered it on the channel, I'm pretty sure.
It was so long ago.
It really was long ago, almost a year ago now. But yeah, it had those pastel colored Joy-Cons, a really pleasant look to it.
I love
very
those
fitting.
Joy-Cons.
Animal Crossing. Do you have them, Triss?
I want them.
Then we also had a minor thing, but we had the Super Nintendo World Challenge in New York, in which they had this live event at Grand Central Station, in which they had like different question blocks. I mean, actually, I'm explaining it. Triss, you were there. You should tell us about this.
I was there. I could do this. So the Super Nintendo World Challenge was supposed to be the first of many events to give people like this grand prize of getting to go to Super Nintendo World when it opened. Originally supposed to open in July, and it was basically this. It was basically a tech demo of what they had for the park. So there was a bunch of question mark blocks lined up. I think there was around 20 to 25 people that would play per round. And you would basically just keep hitting the question mark block with this special glove that held a specific like smartphone device in it that had the app. And it was detecting with each hit. And it was basically just trying to get as many coins as you can. There wasn't like a proper winner, but it was just to have fun testing the tech behind it. And then afterwards, after the whole coin round, and who got the most coins, then they would hit it again, and someone would win the grand prize of, they would get to go to Super Nintendo World. I think there was about one per hour or two. Otherwise, like, the other grand prize that would come in was, like, pretty much one of every piece of merchandise they had with them, versus only getting one or two things. So
and now, almost a year later, they still haven't taken their trip to Super Nintendo World.
I hope they follow through with those people, eventually bringing them there.
I'm sure they will. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a cute event. Like it was fun to watch and see like a bunch of people having fun with this. But it was awkward because they clearly weren't ready to have press there outside of the Japanese press that were there for coverage of their new theme park. Because they had a whole section dedicated to them to watch, and then all other media, quite literally, were sent to sit on the floor in this one corner.
Right.
We couldn't really take any good pictures or anything. That's why most people, it was after the event itself, they did like, from a distance, they did like some sort of video talking about what they saw behind them. It was awkward, but it was kind of nice to go to, even still.
We can say something, Tom?
Oh, I just remember that event, and it felt like they were announcing it for people to know about it, more so than actually giving new information about the park. Like a very PR speak like event, which was a little bit disappointing at the time, really.
Yeah, that's why we were there. We're like, oh, we're gonna get new information on this park, and no, we didn't. And it would be almost a year until the Nintendo Direct at the end of this year that we'd actually find out some official, concrete information about the park. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Also in February, we had Nintendo at PAX East, which would end up being basically the final convention known to mankind.
Was that in February? I thought that was in March.
It was February 27th to March 1st.
I was about to say.
PAX East is always in this weird, like, end of February to end of April range. It's never consistent.
Yeah, it kind of varies, right?
Yeah, and I was actually surprised they even had it. Like, I could have...
Yeah.
If it was a week later, it would have been canceled. But
at the booth, we should get into what Nintendo had. They had a big Animal Crossing section. Like, they basically built like the entire island there. Like, super adorable. They had like a tent you could like get into. They had mascots there like Tom Nook walking around.
Yep.
They had Pokemon Sword and Shield, I believe, playable at a separate booth.
Yep.
And then Nintendo Minute had a panel that was, of course, Animal Crossing focused as well. So yeah, Animal Crossing, obviously Nintendo's big focus at this event, as it should be.
Yeah.
It was the only game they that was coming up that they were showing off. That I think. So yeah, you were there, Tris, right? So what did you think of the booth?
So it took me a while to actually get to the booth because the lines were always so long because everyone wanted to go experience it. But there were two sides to the booth. There was a photo op section, which is where you go through the island. You can stop at a bunch of little sections, get pictures taken with Tom Nook or Isabella KK Slider, or just with a bunch of the different tools. And it was really nicely done, actually. I have a bunch of pictures that I took from there. It was a really cute experience, and they really did a good job making that booth themed really nicely. It felt like the budget they normally put into like the themed E3s, like when they remade New Donk City, for example, or the Breath of the Wild area.
I know,
like,
it makes me wonder what
really
they
nice.
had. It makes me wonder what they had planned for E3 that we didn't get this year.
I know, but it was really
of...
nice to get that. And then the other side of it was all the demos, but those had lines that would cap like an hour into PAX opening, so never got to play the demo there, but the photo op was always quick and moving, so that one was really nice to go through.
Okay. Yeah, and who knows? I mean, I think hasn't PAX already announced like their upcoming dates for 2021, like delaying PAX to east to like
June.
I think
it's
July,
a week.
June.
It's a week before E3 would normally happen.
We'll see if
Yeah.
we'll see they can pull it off. I don't think they will. That was a ballsy decision.
They specifically said if they say in whatever form it takes, meaning they're prepared to make it online for that week if they need to. But or prepared. We'll see how that goes.
I hope that's a route that they're prepared for.
I'm just wondering when Summer Games Fest is going to happen next year.
Did it even happen this year?
Good question. The world may never know. I don't even think Jeff knows.
But I guess to comment, since we mentioned Animal Crossing a few times already at this point, to touch upon the Animal Crossing Direct that we mentioned from the start of, or earlier in February. I loved that it was one of those big themed directs where the whole thing is like an advertisement, and I mean like an in-universe advertisement, like what we got for like what was it? Like Mario Kart 8 originally got on Wii U, where it was like a bunch of TV commercials that people were flipping through, and it was like in-universe advertisements for the game and things about the game. I love that they did that for Animal
marketing,
Crossing.
where you present an advertisement as an advertisement and have us eat it up. It's like, yeah, Nintendo, give me more of that. Give me more of those ads.
It was like what you see. It was like the vacation package for like the Nook Suite, something like that. It was really, really charming.
Yeah.
No, it was pretty well done.
Yeah, that direct was great. It gave us a lot of information too on the game, like more specific info, like regarding terraforming and just the extent that you can personalize and customize your island.
Right.
That direct, it showed a lot of information that I think is a lot of what ended up bringing in such a large audience for New Horizons. Just like I had friends who asked me, yeah, but can you like move buildings? Like how much can I really customize my island? Friends who didn't know, never played Animal Crossing or barely played any games on their Switch. And thanks to this direct, I was able to reassure them like, yes, this game is going to be great. There's so much freedom because we learned a lot in that presentation. So yeah, that direct was great. Although, at the same time, it also continued to set the expectation for the year that we would be getting these directs every month for these big presentations, but...
Nope.
Oh well. But
not for a little while after this.
Yeah, the content itself was great, though.
Yeah. Although, actually, I say not for a while, but there actually was a direct mini the following month. So, I guess let's go ahead and get into March, in which we had the first Luigi's Mansion 3 pack, which added new costumes, new minigames, new modes for the Scarescraper.
So, real quick on the Luigi's Mansion DLC, because that was so weird to me, because I definitely think they ended up moving that forward because of everything. Because the original, like when they put out the fact that they were doing DLC for Luigi's Mansion 3, they were like, this will release April, like end of April and like end of July. And then they finished all the DLC in April, like by April. Like, did you guys move this up? Did plans change? Because this was sudden and it dropped quick.
I totally forgot there was even a pack released.
Yeah, I kind of did too, even though I covered both of these. Like the idea's fine, I guess. I don't know. The whole thing is weird because I don't, who plays Luigi's Mansion for the mini games, especially ones that aren't online. And, they were, as you're saying, Triss, they probably did move these up. I mean, I have a feeling, like, I think Nintendo has, like, a bunch of stuff ready to go. Like, in the recent interview with, I think it was Nintendo's president, where he basically said, we had Pikmin 3 ready to slot in whenever we needed to. And I feel like it's the case for a lot of things Nintendo. Like, they have things just ready to go, just sitting around. It's like, push this out. But the Luigi's Mansion DLC in particular was kind of weird to launch at the beginning of a pandemic when we can't get together to play these mini games. It's not online. We can't see our friends or family, so I don't know. It was weird.
I wonder if that's why they pushed it out, though, or pushed it to get out so quick, because, oh shoot, this pandemic is starting.
Yeah.
We gotta do this so that people can, I guess, play with their friends and family, like, for
Before
the
they
little
can.
time they have left. Maybe.
The narrow window. Maybe.
At least it also added stuff to Skyscraper, the online mode, because I love that mode personally. It's really fun.
Yeah, and that is
Costumes are
right,
really
and
fun.
that is online, you said. So costumes are cool. Yeah, they had some fun ones in there. I forget how they were split up between the two DLC packs. But
Yeah, same.
there were some good ones. We also had Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX released. We had multiplayer added to Mario Kart Tour, which is kind of amazing because, for one, this update, it's a good update. Like, I did a stream of it. It was fun. But this is also what I thought Mario Kart was when it released initially on mobile. Like, at least during the beta, I remember playing online. I was streaming that, I think. Or no, I couldn't stream it. But I was playing with, what I thought were people. But it turns out they were just CPUs. Because I realized after a while, I'm like, there's something weird about this. Because you could pause the game, and then you could just resume where you left off. I'm like, wait, am I pausing it for everyone? Like, what's going on here? Or maybe it wasn't, or you could skip the beginning of the race too, like, the little intro sequence. It's like, how's this work? And then I did some testing and, like, realized, no, these are just CPUs. Like, even though they branded them they gave them with real names, it's nonsense. So I wasn't a fan of that, and it's weird that it took them that long until they finally added multiplayer. But ultimately, it is a good update. It's the way it should have been all the time. And I don't know, is that how you play? I know you still play Mario Kart, Triss, so do you usually play multiplayer? Or?
Yeah, I still play Mario Kart Tour practically daily because of all the login bonuses and all that stuff. But I pretty much, when I finish going through all the main content, I do try jumping on multiplayer and have a good time with that. It's definitely fun to play around with. I like the fact that, especially after that point, there's more ways to create, like, the private lobbies. It's not only with friends. Like, they definitely have been making it more and more accessible.
Indeed.
It's funny looking at that, and it's a lot like No Man's Sky, but I guess it doesn't have the same level of hype or promise, so people just kind of gave it a pass, maybe.
Well, there is a gold pass you can buy in the game, but I'm still paying for some reason, despite never using it. Gotta figure out how to cancel that thing. A little later, just a few days later, actually, we had Lego Super Mario officially revealed. So, I forget if this had been... No, I don't think it had been rumored. I think this just came out of nowhere, if I remember correctly. Where, we found out Nintendo and Lego collaborating officially, where we get this whole, like, unique-looking Lego kit, where instead of it being, like, these builds that are very specific in how you build them, it's like, no, make your own Mario level. Like, it kind of felt like Mario Maker in Lego form, where you build a level, you have this interactive Lego Mario figure, you can bop around to interact with things, and Mario's face actually changes, which is super unique. And it's the kind of thing that's like, wow, why haven't we seen this before? Like, it took Nintendo 30 plus years to finally work with Lego on something when Lego has properties for almost everything else. But on the other hand, it's like, maybe it's a good thing to wait it, because this is kind of a cool idea. Yeah. We have this interactive Mario in this really novel setting. And I think this almost could be looked at as maybe the unofficial start of Mario's 35th anniversary. I don't think, they weren't really celebrating it yet, but it does kind of feel like this would have tied into it had their plans not been blown apart by the pandemic.
I will say quickly, you said out of nowhere, but Lego did send you to Denmark the previous year, so I wonder really if that was tied into this, or they actually were just wanting to show off their Lego games in the park at the time. So
yeah, that was the interesting thing. Yeah, Lego sent us, like, invited us to their headquarters in Denmark, and for games that were already out largely at that point. And in hindsight, it's like, maybe we should have, like. Yeah, exactly. So again, it's like they gave us no indication anything like this was in the works. Maybe they should have, like, so we could tease something. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's a cool collaboration.
I think they had actually teased it like a day or two before properly announcing it, where they showed, like, something.
Oh, they showed the figure.
Yeah, they showed, like, a glimpse of the figure. Because I remember a bunch of people thinking, like, is this like a weird Lego Mario Switch dock thing?
I remember thinking
Yeah.
that because the people had done some measurements and it seemed to match up, which would make like Lego Mario like huge. Of course, that didn't end up being the case.
I just remember him looking horrified in some of those.
Yeah, very much so. Especially like when his eyes are turned off.
Yeah.
All right, then we also had an indie world, which we got announcements for a variety of games, including Dicey Dungeons, Enter the Gungeon, moving out in summer in Mara.
Mara.
Thank you. So, yeah, that. Oh wait, no, actually, there's even more. I got confused by how we formatted this. Because of course, how could I forget? We had a big release in this month, being finally Animal Crossing New Horizons. I of course had this a couple weeks early for review, thankfully, although in hindsight, like a couple weeks is still pushing it for Animal Crossing. I remember one of the very first items I got for this game was a face mask. And I'm like, wow, that is too perfect. That's a little uncanny. I don't know if that was pre-planned. I'm pretty sure it was random, but like that is kind of amazing. So I don't know how much more we had to say about Animal Crossing that we haven't already, but really did just come out at the perfect time, and I think really like helped the mental state of really everyone playing it during those times. Because I remember especially like now it's weird because like I think we're all kind of used to. I mean, this is not everyone's doing the quarantine thing, but those of us who are kind of more used to it now. But those early few weeks, like, just dragged. Like, it felt like an eternity where you couldn't go anywhere, couldn't see anyone. And when Animal Crossing came, I was like, oh wow, I can actually hang out with people again in some kind of setting, and I have something to discuss with people and something to show off. Like, Animal Crossing dominated social media for at least a month. It was you couldn't go on Twitter without seeing like 30 posts about it.
Pretty
in
much,
the last minute. Yeah. So any other thoughts about Animal Crossing before we move on?
Animal Crossing, I remember just being super excited for this game. Like I loved New Leaf a lot, and so when New Horizons came out, I played it for about a month or two, and then I fell off really quickly. I came back a little bit for the updates and such, but I don't know if it's just me, but I do feel like this game kind of has like, I don't know, there's not much of an incentive to go back every single day for like your whole life, pretty much. It's very, I know people tell me like you can go and I even think I did this with New Leaf, maybe. Even then I only played that game for about, was it 100 days out of like its 7-year lifespan? I don't know, but it felt like longer than that. But yeah, like I know people tell me you can just go every day and like do a couple things for like 20 minutes and then get out, and I'm just like, okay, I get that. I don't have any desire to do that though now, so I don't know, maybe I'll go back eventually, because I know some people who've even fallen off say like, I visited my town for the first time in a few months and everyone missed me, it was so sad. So that might be me in a few days.
Gotta go back in time for Toy Day.
Exactly.
Yeah, New Horizons, it is a little strange in the sense that, I mean, it makes sense that they did this, but there is sort of an ending to the game. There's sort of a conclusion, in a way, where they put the credits in, and it happens, like, in any other game, the amount of time it would take to get from start to, quote-unquote, finish, that would make sense. But in New Horizons, it still kind of feels like, wait, I just started. Like, I don't want it to end. And it doesn't end. You actually unlock a lot more tools right after that to customize your island even more. But still, it does give you this feeling of like, oh man, is it even worth coming back every day now? Like for me, I kept doing that. But that kind of conclusion that just kind of happens really abruptly, and then the lack of any sort of conclusion, it just does kind of drag on and you just lose touch at some point for sure.
Yeah, that is kind of the problem, I think, is in general with like these evergreen, like ongoing titles, like almost games as a service. I don't know if Animal Crossing quite counts as that, but yeah, where like there's no real definitive end. The closest that you're saying is a credit sequence you get, where you unlock effectively the final set of tools. But yeah, otherwise, like it's just at least for me, like my interest is kind of slowly tapers off. Like there comes a point where like you miss a day and it turns into a few days and a week, and then you're like you forget about the game entirely. And I find it like it's weird. Like for me, I find it hard to. I mean, I think that kind of experience definitely affects my overall opinion, and I don't know if that's fair to the game, because I already said in our Game of the Year awards, like Animal Crossing has some of my favorite moments of the year, like hanging out with our audience, seeing hanging out with my mom in the game who never plays games. She loves Animal Crossing. Like those are great moments, but the fact that it just kind of tapers off, it just doesn't leave me with like a lasting impression. And So, and I don't know. I don't know. There's a way to fix it. The whole idea of Animal Crossing is it goes on forever. I mean, I think the only thing they could do is just find a way to make it more interesting to come back to after the first month or two. But I think a large part of what keeps it going initially is, the constant progression, the things that you're unlocking. But you do reach a point where it's like, I've unlocked everything, and all that's left is for me to find new ways to screw up my island with these island designer tools. And now my island's at a point where I hate my island, and I can't fix it because it's gonna take too long to fix it. So,
well, you'd have to
Anyways.
look at something like Fortnite that has to have staff like perpetually work long hours almost, it feels like, to keep new content coming in different seasons. But Nintendo, I think they didn't really predict how well Animal Crossing would do. Otherwise, maybe they would have planned for something like that. And at the same time, getting used to their staff working from home, those are two kind of things that go against additional content being ready there for Animal Crossing to keep it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do wonder, like, if the fact that, the holidays aren't included in the base game, like, you download them one at a time. I think, it largely was because so people couldn't time skip to them and everyone's pretty much on the same page. But I think it must have really worked out to Nintendo's benefit, too. It's like, oh, we got a few extra months to work on this content. Good. We don't have to scramble the last minute, so it's kind of fitting. And yeah, like, and we can't understate how much of a success it was. Like, not just, for gamers, but for Nintendo. Like, this game was massive. Like, I think it's second only to Call of Duty for overall sales for the year, and it's only because Call of Duty is on multiple platforms, where the Animal Crossing is just on Switch. But yeah, like, again, perfect timing for that game. You could not have timed it better, to the point where, I almost wonder, like, did Nintendo plan this pandemic? Are they the ones behind this whole thing to boost Animal Crossing sales?
No, that was Borat.
Yeah, there we go. Exactly. Maybe Borat is just, Nintendo's cover. They're using Borat as cover.
Perhaps. Honestly, I'd believe anything.
All right, let's move on. The month basically concluded with a Nintendo Direct Mini, in which we got the announcement of Xenoblade Chronicles for May 29th.
Well,
then
technically we had it announced back in September 2019, but they didn't really show much outside of scenery. This is when they actually showed, like, the game, including, like, the new content coming to it.
You need to write these notes better, Tris.
Sorry.
I see how you had it now. We also got an update for Ring Fit Adventure, which good timing for that too, considering we were just entering again quarantine at this point, and people need things to work out with. Which is why that was my game of the year last year. Or rather, I should say my game of the year last year this year. Smash Ultimate, we had the announcement that a new fighter was coming in June, specifically from ARMS. This was unprecedented. They had never said we're getting a fighter coming up for, from what genre or series before. So that was kind of completely out of the wild, and I'm sure we'll have more to say about that in a second. We also got the announcement of Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics for June 5th. So a couple months later. And then we also found out more information on the Pokemon Sword and Shield expansion pass, being Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra. So yeah, look, in hindsight, not, I mean, it was a direct mini, like not a ton of big things, but it wasn't a bad one. It had some stuff that was available immediately, like the Ring Fit update. We had things to discuss, like the Smash Fighter, and we had games to look forward to, like Clubhouse 51 Games and, again, Xenoblade. So yeah, any thoughts about that looking back?
I actually really liked that direct looking back. I think it was timed well to kind of tell us, like, okay, yeah, there's still, definitely things still coming. And it opened with the whole, I think this is the first time they opened the presentation saying, hey, because of pandemic, things might change compared to what you see here, so keep that in mind. But they had some decent announcements in here that I think were honestly really solid. I think Clubhouse Games was like the one that surprised everybody the most, but got a lot of people really excited, I think. It was nice to see more info on the Pokemon expansion pass. I think the Smash Fighter coming from ARMS was a big deal, but I do think they waited there was a little too long in between announcing that and then showing who, because there's only so many characters it could be at that point.
I kind of hated that they even said, like, oh, this next character is going to be from ARMS. Guess who it is? And I'm like, no, I just want to know who the next fighter is. I don't know why they had to feel like, I don't know why they felt like they had to announce it that way. It just didn't make sense to me.
I think, so for me, it was a little disappointing because it's fun to see. I am actually a big fan of ARMS. I think it would be more fun to see the proper reveal of the character, like, without having any idea of who it was. But in terms of optics and expectation management, I think it probably was the best decision, just because ARMS, it sold well, but it's not, you know, it's not the biggest game out there. I think it is a bit more niche than some of the other characters that maybe fit in. I think it probably was smart to give us an idea, like a spectrum of what we're dealing with. That way people weren't like immediately disappointed by what the fighter may have been.
Yeah.
Plus, it put more people back on ARMS for a while. It made them interested in revisiting it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I wonder if there was a blip in sales during that point. Ooh, I go check out this game. But it was, I will say, it was kind of fun because it gave us something. It gave us a different angle to discuss for Smash that we never had before, which is we had like a concrete frame of reference for what we're dealing with, in which we had a cast of what 12-ish, a dozen-ish characters that it could possibly be. Although we did narrow it down to, you know, what, you know, I think we had narrowed it down to 2, and it ended up being one of them, of course, being MinMin.
Yeah,
MinMin or
I think
Helix.
MinMin always. Yeah, yeah. I still would love Helix, but
Yeah.
I'm good with MinMin. Love MinMin. Helix would have been amazing though. But yeah, it was something different. I mean, even if I wish they had, you know, I may have preferred it. It had to be non-known period, but I didn't. I see why they did it. So and it gave a different angle to discussing it. So we're predicting it.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally the opposite of Byleth, how they revealed that, you know? So it was, yeah, for sure. I agree.
I think we've actually seen this from Nintendo a couple times now, where it seems like they have gotten a little bit better with messaging recently. I think they really learned after the announcement of Federation Force, where people just were not happy with that, where I think it was the following year they paired the announcement of Samus Returns with Metroid Prime 4, which, or yeah, I think it was the following year, or following couple years, and of course in hindsight, that may have been a mistake considering what's happened with Metroid Prime 4 since, but even outside of that, we see Nintendo now be very clear. It's like, hey, this upcoming Direct is about this one game only. Don't expect any other game announcements. We even had that in the Super Nintendo World Direct. It's like, hey, no game announcements here. This is purely about Super Nintendo World. So I think it is smart for Nintendo to better focus in on the messaging, just to manage expectations better, so the people don't go hog wild with them.
Yeah.
I think this is kind of the start of that.
They had to do that again later in the year, which we'll get to later, for a title Joey's fondly will fondly remember.
Oh my god, that's gonna be a fun one.
And just for this month too, Ring Fit, I love the rhythm game. That's something I love to just start out in Ring Fit, but I don't think that's any good for me now doing like the higher advanced stages. I don't think it's good to like go in cold with those, but definitely a mode I kept playing a lot. And they had, what, the female version of Ring in it too, so that was a really neat update.
Yeah, no, that was a great update. That was a fun surprise. Like it was cool that it brought in, you know, a variety of Nintendo songs plus ones already in Ring Fit, and just let you play it to music. It kind of felt like a what's what I'm looking for? I don't want to say low budget, but like, yeah, low budget, like a low budget version of Beat Saber.
Yeah.
You know, kind of Nintendo's version of Beat Saber. Obviously not a full game, but it's as a cool little extra. It's really fun, and by this point I had already fallen off Ring Fit because I'd injured my neck. Earlier, or I guess last year, a couple weeks after Ring Fit came out, just ruined all the momentum I had. But I've since picked up Ring Fit again recently because I talked about how that was my game of the year for 2019 this year. And I'm super addicted to it. And Tom, to your point, what I started doing is I've started incorporating the music now into my post-workout routine. So once I'm done with the adventure, I'll go play a song or two just for fun, and that usually completely tires me out because, especially if you're playing on the advanced settings, it actually gets pretty tough. It really does start to feel even more Beat Saber-ish than we already have because it has you doing like holding squats for like 30 seconds at a time as you're like trying to squeeze in this ring rapidly as you're like turning it at the same time. Really neat addition, totally free. I don't think Ring Fit really needed it. But, and I'd be curious, like, I would love if we had stats behind it, like, did it boost sales, or did it bring people back to the game? In any case, it's a cool addition, and I wish they would add even more to it, you know, like, add even more to that mode.
Yeah,
but
more
yeah, definitely
songs.
check out if you haven't already.
Those songs would be awesome.
Yeah.
Right?
I kept on just doing Jump Up Superstar on repeat. Like, it was just so much fun to have that song in that game and just to be like working out to it. It's awesome.
Especially with how like it actually feels like you're jumping up when you get out of a squat. You know? Like it kind of feels like you're taking part in the action. And some of the remixes they have there, like they're what's the word I'm looking for? Not remix, but it's a bunch of, it's like almost
Medley?
a montage of songs. Medley. Thank
yeah,
you.
like
Yeah,
where
they combine.
everything. Yeah.
I love the Wii Fit one, by the way.
Yeah.
They brought back the best part of Wii Fit, which was the what's it called? The step board exercise, like music rhythm board. I forget what it was called. You stepped on and off the board to music, and the song was super catchy. It's back here, arguably better now, and it's really cool. Breath of the Wild's music is great. Splatoon, Mario Odyssey, all good stuff. So yeah, neat little fun update from Nintendo. It also added a female voice for Ring, and then also added the ability to where you kill off an enemy midway through a set, you can keep doing the set. I didn't turn that on because I'm like, no, I look forward to ending my set early. But some people, some people who are hardcore to their workouts, they like that. That way, especially for exercises that balance, that target both sides of the body, you're not always just doing the left side before it cuts off, or you can do the right side. So, great update all around. All right, anything else about the Direct, or should we move on to April?
I think we're good to move on to April.
All right. So April, not a whole ton here, although there was a couple of big things. We start off with a mobile update, a Dr. Mario World getting the beginning will be a cascade of ridiculous Doctor characters, being this time being Dr. Nabbit and Dr. Goomba Tower. And I think most recently we have had Dr. Piranha Plant. Is anyone still playing this game? Was anyone really playing this game?
Little bit. I'm nowhere near like super caught up or anything, but I think I play it maybe like I'll drop off for like a month. I'll come back for like 2 weeks, and I'll be gone for a couple months again. It's just hard to keep up with. It's my favorite take on Dr. Mario, but like.
Because it's not Dr. Mario?
Well, I really like the online multiplayer, and I think it's fun with the variety of characters, but it's really silly. It's really silly.
They haven't added any major new modes or anything, right? It's still the same base core game.
They added some extra things, but I think that was like much earlier this year. And while it ties together the experience a whole lot more, if you're like me and just dropped off a long time ago and came back to it, it gets a little overwhelming to try to go through all of that. There's a lot to do.
You know what would be smart, I think? And I say this to one who's not in business, obviously, but I think it would be cool if they had some kind of cross compatibility between games. Like, hey, if you unlock Dr. Nabbit or Dr. Goomba Tower and Dr. Mario, you get that Mario Kart tour as well. That gives you a whole reason to revisit, this cross, the synergy between games. That gives you a reason to revisit them. Because, I don't know, Dr. Mario World just didn't do anything for me. Like, I'm a big fan of Dr. Mario, particularly Dr. Mario multiplayer. Tom and I have had some epic matches in Dr. Mario. And this game just doesn't quite scratch that itch, because it's not... I mean, it definitely has elements of Dr. Mario, obviously, but the core gameplay isn't quite there. And that's the part that turned me off, is they don't have it straight up Dr. Mario mode. Yeah.
That's fair.
Anyways... we then had a actually sizable update on April 21st to Super Mario Maker 2. Actually, wait, was this the release date or the announcement, or was it both, Tris? Do you remember?
I think this was when it was announced. I don't remember exactly when it released. No, wait. I think this was the release, because in the notes here it leads to your tour. So
okay, yeah. So I think it might have been announced or released at the same time. I think I forget exactly. It was around this time, but we had the addition to Koopalings. We had the Frog Suit. We had a world map maker added to the games. These are all big additions, and there's even other stuff I'm forgetting by this point. And it's a good update. It's a great update. My two issues is a lot of it is content I feel like should have been there initially, because by this point I had already fallen off Super Mario Maker 2. I loved Super Mario Maker 1, or liked it a lot. And Super Mario Maker 2 just kind of felt a bit like a letdown to me. It didn't have quite enough new content in the same vein as the first game. Like, it felt too limited in how you could use it, and so I had already long since fallen off, and while this content they added was new, it wasn't enough to pull me back. Even if, like, the World Map Maker is something I've been wanting since the first game, but by this point, I'm like, well, I'm done making levels, so I don't need a World Map Maker.
Yeah, I feel like this update and the World Maker in particular is what would have warranted the game being a sequel to begin with, rather than just a Switch version of the Wii U and 3DS game.
Yep.
And I'm just going to say it. That game just was for Wii U. Like, I don't see it. Yeah. It's just not as good on Switch. It really isn't.
It is weird to say that, just because, I mean, at least for me, because, well, and the marketplace in general. But, like, in general, I wasn't a huge fan of the gamepad. I didn't think they found great uses for it. But, as you're saying, Mario Maker was absolutely one of them. Like, that game worked perfect for, like, it felt like it was made specifically for the Wii U, where I loved being able to, like, edit levels on the gamepad and then be able to play them and see them in full on the TV. Like, even though your perspective, like, you're seeing the same level in both, it just felt different seeing it on the TV, which is how most people experience it. And yeah, it's just not as good on Switch. The interface is worse. It just doesn't, you have a more limited viewpoint too, because of the accommodations they had to make for it, so you can see less of the screen at a time. And yeah, it's just just a little annoying. I think had it not been so big on Mario Maker 1, I would have been annoyed less by the changes to this game and the sacrifices and compromises. But because I was a huge fan of Mario Maker 1, it was difficult not to see this as, if not a step back, just a step sideways, and it wasn't enough for me in a sequel.
It was a subpar sequel, but I do wonder if it would have been better if it released this year instead. So released a year later.
With all this content?
All this content originally on it,
yeah.
and tie it into Mario's 35th anniversary.
That
I think
probably
that
would've been the
would
smart
have made
idea.
it. I think that would have made it a lot better.
Especially if they had other updates to come in addition to all the base game content.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree, because I should mention that they effectively said at this point, this is the end of the road for content. Like, they basically said no more big updates, which is, I mean, on the one hand, I kind of get it, because if this would, I mean, I guess I didn't know at this point, but this update didn't pull people back, which maybe it did, I don't know. It didn't quite pull me back. You know, then what's the point of adding content? But at the same time, it's like, it felt like the original Super Mario Maker had a much better support schedule than this. I think the main issue with Mario Maker 2 was they just waited too long between updates. With Mario Maker 1, they had smaller updates, but they were out pretty quickly after release, and that's what they should have done here. Instead of adding all this content at once, I think had they given it to us sooner in bite-sized chunks, I think people would have been more receptive to it. Like, I don't care if I get the Koopalings by themselves in one update. That's cool. Let me play around with that. Let me see what they can do, and then give me the frog suit as its own thing. And then, you know, I think adding it all at once is unnecessary.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure what Nintendo's going for here. I don't know if I fully understand it. I think they may have like dampened how many sales it could have had. Like, I know it sold well, but I think it could have done even better. But hey, what do I know?
Was this,
I will
the
say,
update that also added the, it was like the Super Mario Bros. 2 mushroom? Which lets you make Super Mario Bros. 2, like, levels? Yeah, that's another thing where, like, there's so much potential. There was that, I think the previous update in 2019 added Link to Super Mario Bros. 1. Like, there were so many interesting things they tried adding that it makes me wonder if they had to cut off support early because it just wasn't doing well, but they had more plans.
I'm pretty sure from what I've heard, and even if not, like, just looking at it, it feels like they had more ambitious plans for Mario Maker 2. Like, I feel like, I'm pretty sure that Mario 2 mushroom was meant to be like a whole mode eventually, and it should have been. Like, I ended up remaking like the first level from Mario Bros. 2 in the game using the mushroom. It's such a pain in the butt because in order to use the special abilities of the mushroom, you have to guarantee that they have that power up. If you get hit, they lose it, and that can break your level design if you're planning on them having it. Where they can toss things around, and they should have gone all in. Like, especially because they have an option in the game called extra modes or extra styles.
Extra styles,
and takes only you one. To a style, only one 3D world. I don't want to get into it. That was
I'm surprised they didn't like Steve's Meet It and just released a patch to just remove the other S. God,
I know, right?
That's so irritating.
It is. It's gonna be there forever, bugging me, mocking me. I will say real quick, I have actually been going back to Mario Maker 2 recently, only because there's a level I need to finish up. I started it over a year ago. It's perfect for the holidays, so I need to finish it. And I recently added the. I realized that using the frog suit would be perfect for this level. And I'm like, oh, why didn't I use it before? Like, I would have thought I would realize this when I first created the level, completely forgetting until now, it wasn't even in the game then. And it's one of those things that to me is like, yeah, why wasn't that there initially? Like, that is an example of the update being like, it feels like it should have been there the entire time.
Yeah.
But anyways. Moving on, we also got the second pack for Luigi's Mansion 3. Adding new basically an expansion of what we saw the first time. More minigames, more costumes, more scraper stuff. I think the minigames of this collection were actually stronger than part 1, and again, just makes me wish they were online, because they seem to be fun, but I didn't really have a great way of testing them with friends, because we're in a pandemic.
How do I keep missing these updates? I didn't even know Luigi's Mansion 3 had any updates this year.
I mean, it came out like, I remember it releasing later in the day, I think. It was kind of like an easy thing to overlook, and no one talked about it afterward. Like, we had our tour, and that was it.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's talked about it since.
Wow.
So
sadly. Yeah, April as a whole was kind of the start of the drought, quote-unquote, of Nintendo news that people were really crying over throughout the whole year. Even though it really was just April that really didn't have that much. Which, sure, a whole month with little to nothing is kind of a lot. But
it felt longer than that.
Yeah, I think because of the pandemic, it felt longer to people.
And also, I know they did announce, like, I'm getting ahead of myself to know, they did announce Paper Mario later, but then it was just Paper Mario and, like, nothing else. Like,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
At a time when we needed games the most, it hurts when you don't hear anything for a while. So,
Especially when other companies are communicating pretty well about their plans.
Yeah, for context, like by this point, I think this is the point where people start falling off Animal Crossing. Obviously, it was still selling well. I'm sure tons of people are still playing it, but the hardcore crowd are probably starting to fall off the game, and now they're looking forward to, hey, what's next?
Yep.
And unfortunately, it would be a while, especially with the part we haven't gone to yet again, E3 being canceled, and that'll be, I think, no, that will be in this discussion, in this part of the discussion. Yep. So let's go ahead and move into May then. And we actually did have a Nintendo Direct or Nintendo E3 of sorts, if you will, if you want to consider the massive Nintendo leak, which resulted from a massive hack with information coming out over the coming days and weeks, just showing off all kinds of things from Nintendo's history that had never been revealed before, or maybe had been talked about in some ways, but we had never like seen concrete evidence or like a demonstration of what it looked like. Where we saw like early prototypes of games, or which included like cut content or content that was decided, or even I think games that were never released entirely. We had like early versions of sprites in games. Like I remember an early version of Baby Mario from Yoshi's Island being shown. We had characters like a human character in Star Fox 2. There was so much in this, I can't remember what all there was. Like
it was a lot.
Like what looked to be like maybe a canceled Donkey Kong game at some point, which might have been I think an early form of Yoshi's Island again, or some other game. I forget exactly. It was just a massive treasure trove, something we had never seen from Nintendo before. Like Nintendo keeps a tight lip. It keeps a tight lip on things, or a tight lid on things. And tight lid and tight lip on things, and seeing this massive leak just showing everything. On the one hand, there's all kinds of ethical issues involving it, obviously, and and legal issues, obviously. I'm sure Nintendo wasn't happy about this. And on the other hand, like, so while it's difficult to celebrate this, on the other hand, it's like this is stuff we would have never seen otherwise, and it was so interesting to see these elements of games. It's like see these treasured games in forms that we had never seen before, and seeing kind of like the evolution of them. That it was just it's such an interesting time that I can't really speak to the ethics of it, but just in terms of like archival purposes, like wow, this is amazing. Just seeing this content.
This whole thing really reminded me of back when Nintendo did the GDC talk about Breath of the Wild, where they really showed a bunch of the early concepts and the way they were building up the game, early looks at the game, or like earlier build. They showed off like some early stuff they had from the game and concept art. This was post-release, obviously, but it kind of reminded me of that. And it's a matter of I would love to see Nintendo embrace game development more, basically, to show the steps they went through. Like, look, there's this game you love. Look what it used to look like. Look at the kind of earlier things that we had going on for it. Look how it evolved into this. And I know I think this is when people had like the really scary looking Yoshi, where he was like a lot longer looking.
That's what I was going to say, the pre-evolved version of Yoshi, the initial one. I hope that version of Yoshi makes it into a game in the future.
But yeah, I think like you mentioned, Andre, for like archiving it, it is really, really nice and interesting to see this kind of stuff. Even though you can't really celebrate it, it just makes me wish that Nintendo would actually recognize these things more, and like they did with Breath of the Wild and a few other games. Because I think it would be really great for them to do.
Nintendo almost could have embraced this, release their own. I mean, maybe they don't want to promote this behavior. Maybe it's kind of like a ransom.
Yeah,
but I think it might have been smart for them to get ahead of it, or do something official with this. They still could, but yeah, there's so much interesting behind the scenes knowledge or behind the scenes media here, assets that I feel like they made a book or something, or a documentary or anything. Like people would eat that up. Like we would love to see this.
Yeah, like for Mario's 35th anniversary, that would have been a great time for like at the release of 3D All Stars to release some kind of book to go and coincide with it, just talking about all this behind the scenes info. I would love to see Nintendo do more like that and just kind of share information about their history and the development of their games. And yeah, this is really cool, but at the same time, it just feels weird because it isn't coming from them, but it is.
Yeah.
But, obviously, just the ethics of it are very strange.
Yeah, very murky.
A couple quick points where Nintendo, and I think some other game designers in general, don't like to mention the early versions of their games, maybe. or maybe unfinished ones, just because they know some players don't understand game development and kind of will think that's bad. And Triss talking about the Breath of the Wild demo, it was done in Zelda 1 style, which kind of pointed to, like, they could just tweak this and make it a Zelda Maker. Like, it would be so much fun. Like, it looked like I would just play that.
Yeah.
And so hopefully something like that is something they can build on in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, I would just love for them to look into more of their history. I think part of it maybe just because, like, it's kind of like, it's a little bit like Disney almost, where I feel like these ideas, like, these ideas could always be repurposed in the future. Like, they never know what they may choose to bring back. And that might be why, like, a fear of, like, competitors or others looking at, what they were looking at before.
Yeah.
Right.
So, it's hard to say. But, yeah, I just wish they would release this stuff officially. And, yeah, to also give hackers less reason to try and hack them. But, no, although that may not stop them. Who
Andre,
knows?
speaking of Nintendo ideas, though, they do have, like, a vault of ideas they've tried for sure. Because I believe before this, like, a year or two ago, Dylan Cuthbert was mentioning that they, at Q Games, he had worked on Star Fox originally. He came from Britain and worked on it. He mentioned how he pitched some idea to Nintendo that seems totally unique and cool. And Nintendo's like, oh, we've already done that. We've already tried that. And it's like, what?
When?
It's like,
30 years ago.
Wow.
So they do have tons of ideas. I'm sure they're always prototyping or doing the equivalent of game jams.
Exactly. Interestingly, in hindsight at least, they also took action against. There was a lot of reports of someone who had basically rebuilt Super Mario 64 on the PC. If I recall correctly, it didn't use any actual assets from the game. I believe it was a complete, like, reverse engineered type thing where they just rebuilt the entire thing. And it allowed things like widescreen support. I think it had 60 frames per second. People were able to make mods for it. There's one really interesting mod where someone basically recreated the renders that were used for the render style that was used to promote Mario 64. Basically put those models in the game, and it looked kind of amazing. Like
So cool.
Yeah, it was so neat. Like, it seemed like everything, like almost every frame could be like a marketing image at that time. But Nintendo took action against this. Basically removed download links and YouTube videos showing it off. A lot of people were very upset by this, and as it turns out, I think there were already rumblings by this point as to why, but we would officially find out shortly thereafter, oh, it's because Nintendo has their own 35th anniversary collection in the works, featuring Mario 64, of course, among them. We'll get more to that soon enough. Yeah, we also had the announcement, or I guess the reveal.
The reveal, yeah.
Paper Mario, the Origami King. There had been rumors of a Paper Mario that it was going back to basics, back to the original style. While true in some sense, that really doesn't capture the spirit of this game, so I don't know whether those leaks were based on anything or not. But we did get Origami King. Love the trailer for it. Super cool. Seeing that creepy Peach come out. Greet Mario in this really fantastic art style that was similar to Color Splash, but a little bit more involved, perhaps. Yeah, cool stuff. Really good intro for that game. And I remember we did, I think Tristan and I, we didn't work on, this is before we worked on analysis for the game together.
It was
right?
It was a second trailer that we did a team analysis for that one.
Yeah.
But we both did separate analyses for this one, where we both went completely different directions with it, and both got a lot of things right.
Yeah, God, I think the analysis, I think both of us were like over an hour, approaching an hour.
I think
intense.
mine was like 15 minutes shorter than yours, and you had just gone over an hour. And so it was
almost,
really long. But I remember you messaged me. I was like, I'm the only person that can contest with you on that.
Still waiting for that Metroid tease. What was that all about?
I know. Yep. We have a week-long analysis.
Yeah.
The reveal of Origami King, I think, was done really nicely. Because I think this was them really testing the waters to see, okay, let's not do this with, like, the next, like, major 3D Mario game or Zelda or anything. Let's see what happens if we just drop a trailer. Let's see, do we need the Nintendo Directs for this?
Yes.
This game became, like, the #1 trending on Twitter, on YouTube for, like, the whole day. And it's Paper Mario. Sure, it's Mario, but it's a smaller spin-off series that has been less and less successful in terms of, like, criticism in recent years, in recent entries. Sure, I think Sticker Star and 3DS still sold really well, but it was divisive. So the fact that this captured so much positive attention, and obviously, you know, doubtful attention, it captured much more attention than I think they expected it to, which then led to, you know, subsequent months of I think this was the start of how they decided, okay, well, we're going to try marketing other things like this, see how they do.
Yeah, they better bring back Nintendo Directs though. Like, there's enough. It's not nearly as exciting to just upload a trailer and call it a day. Like, it's more exciting to watch a Direct and then not see the announcement coming. Like, it's just like, it makes reaction videos more fun. Basically,
Yes.
that, yeah.
It was
So,
yeah.
go ahead, Chris.
I was just gonna say, yeah, it was. I vividly remember that morning waking up and just seeing Paper Mario: The Origami King and just having no clue what it was. And for whatever reason, the title at the time, it made me think. I was like, is this a mainline Paper Mario game, or is this gonna be? I almost thought it was gonna be a spin-off of Paper Mario, like a spin-off of the spin-off. Just because, like, I was just like, what? This is so weird. But then, no, sure enough, it opens with that really, that scene with Peach there, and it worked really great. And I think also the trailer, it raised a lot of questions that it didn't necessarily answer, which I think worked really well in Paper Mario's case as a series, just because there are a lot of really high expectations for, or at least hopes for, where the future could go in regards to its successes and what it's done well in the past and what it hasn't done as well in recent years. And whether or not Paper Mario: The Origami King actually ended up being the Paper Mario game that a lot of people want is another question, but this trailer definitely left the option open, at least, or put it on the table, and it led to a lot of discussion and excitement.
Yep. Something, yeah, we kind of needed in those times.
Yeah.
It's like, what is happening? And then it was announced for release just 2 months later, so not all that far away, though it may have seemed like it was at that time. Yeah, so, and I ultimately did enjoy that game, and we will have more to say that when it actually came out. We also had an announcement about a week later that Mario Kart Tour was getting Dixie Kong and Funky Kong back. So this is Dixie Kong's first introduction in Mario Kart, and of course it was a Mario Kart Tour. Why not Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Nintendo? Why? But hey, it's still cool to see her and Funky Kong, back, returning for the first time since Mario Kart Wii. Especially, coming not too long after Tropical Freeze's re-release on Switch, which also had its own funky mode. But yeah, next Mario Kart definitely needs these characters.
Yeah.
So
I think what was nice about this was they tied this into like celebrating like Donkey Kong Country 2, like for Dixie. Like they made this like a little like kind of a big deal when they added these characters. And I think what's even better about it is people.
Wait, was it because it was the 25th anniversary of DKC2 this year?
Yeah,
Is that what they were going for?
Yeah. I think they did that because that's why they added Dixie. Like when they added Dixie, they posted a little like history video about Donkey Kong series. Like they made it a pretty big deal to see like, look, here's these Donkey Kong characters in Mario Kart. And I think this was the first time when people really started looking at Mario Kart Tour and saying, huh, wow, this really is a Mario Kart game. Because before that, it's like, oh, yeah, you have Pauline, yeah, but you also got Peach, and you got Hammer Bro, which is nice. I think Monty Mole came around this time, too, but it was with bringing back Funky and adding Dixie that it made people start to actually look at this game as a Mario Kart game.
Right. Yeah, definitely helped. I don't know if it brought a lot of people back to the game, but maybe it did. I don't know.
When was the landscape update? I don't remember when that was.
Was that not with multiplayer?
I think
no,
that
I guess it wasn't.
I think it was sometime in the spring for sure.
Okay, because
yeah.
Oddly enough, out of all of these things, that's actually what got me to come back for the longest. Just being able to play
that is the best
landscape
update.
mode.
Yep.
Yeah, so I didn't remember.
Should have been
when
there.
it was.
Should have always been there. It wasn't because Nintendo was hell-bent initially on focusing entirely on the single-handed experience, because a lot of people in Japan play it on trains and whatnot. But I don't think that necessarily translates, to everyone worldwide. So I am glad they finally adopted landscape, because portrait mode isn't that useful in Mario Kart. It's all about the landscape view. All right, finally for May, we had the release of Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, which probably, this is basically 10 years after the release of the first one on Wii. So probably bringing it to a whole new audience, particularly with the reach of the Switch. Not that the Wii didn't have a big reach, but while that came in toward the end of the Switch's lifespan, this is toward the, the Switch is still like red hot now.
Yeah.
And this seemed to be a pretty good update. Like it doesn't seem to be like a full remake, but definitely like polished up, an experience that would have looked a bit rough had they not. So I know Tris, you're a big fan of this game, right?
Yeah,
So-
this is absolutely like the way to experience this game, and they went above and beyond what I expected with this. The fact that they actually added in an epilogue, they really updated the looks, they remastered majority of the soundtrack. Like they really went above and beyond with this game to really appease fans who loved this game, and it got the same level of love and attention that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 got when that came out a few years back. So it's nice that they kind of brought this nice balance to it. Now, of course, everyone's waiting for X to get its turn, but I'm really happy this original game got this new updated version, because it's one of my favorite games of all time, and this is definitely the best way to experience that. And I'm really glad that more people got to.
The timing is pretty good too, because this is a point where we weren't getting a ton in the way of announcements or even other game releases, and this is a big, meaty experience. So if you were looking for content to play, this will keep you busy for a while if you're the JRPG type.
Definitely.
All right. Well, any other thoughts on May, or should we head into June?
Let's go to June, E3 month.
Do it.
Yeah.
No E3 month, Joey, actually. But before that, we had the announcement, or rather, sorry, the release of Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classic. So in case Xenoblade wasn't enough for you, here are 51 more games for you. Again, at a pretty good time, still near the early portion of the pandemic. And this had a fairly robust online mode, which you can play at least pretty much every game in 2-player, and a selection of them in 3 and 4-player. And it's a perfect portable game. My parents use it like when they go camping now. They can just pop up a game of checkers on their Switch or Last Card if they wanted to.
Yep.
Well, they need multiple Switches for that one. But yeah, just like, a fun little compilation. That's a game that I haven't, replayed a ton, but it's neat and a good fit for the platform, I think. And it finally brings to fruition something we saw back on the Wii U, which is it Orwella? I forget what the game is called, where we saw someone in the trailer playing a game on the gamepad, tilt the controller and all the pieces slide off. You can do that in this game, finally.
Finally.
Officially.
The more I hear about this game, the more I want to play it. Like, I haven't played it yet, but it's like, I just feel like this would be just a great novelty to have. I don't see myself playing it like multiple times, like a day or what have you. It would be something I'd play once in a while, maybe. But I know Tris, this was like one of your favorite games this year, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mentioned this during our Game of the Year, like the category awards discussion, but Clubhouse Games is basically, my friends and I, it's our answer to the fact that the pandemic means we can't get together every month for our board game nights that we used to do, like, every month. So we've just been booting up this game whenever we want to play board games together. And we pick a bunch of different games, but it's also been a really nice way to learn a bunch of these games without going out and buying all of these different board games.
Fair enough.
Indeed.
For me, I heard Tanks wasn't as good, so I didn't pick it up.
I was so excited for Tanks, and then I found out, it's not really Tanks. It's more a version of the Tank game from Super Mario Party, which wasn't good either. So,
Gotcha, yeah.
So crushed by that, because we played Tanks was amazing. So I wish they'd bring that game back, even as its own game. So. Next, there was no E3 in this. Really nothing in the spot where E3 normally would have been. Instead, we got the Summer Games Fest, which didn't really involve Nintendo at all, or really seemingly any game company. I know there were announcements, but they were so, strung out over the course of the summer. It didn't really feel like an event. It just felt like any period of time. And I think this is kind of like the part of the year that really started sinking in. Oh yeah, this year is going to be different.
Yeah.
And I think we're still feeling the ramifications of that, where games that may have come out this year haven't, perhaps, and it has affected. We know for a fact it has affected Nintendo's content schedule. We don't fully know to what degree, and it's probably still affecting things even into next year. Working from home was an adjustment for Nintendo. I know this. Nintendo was not prepared to be working from home, for everyone to be working from home, and that definitely caused a cascading effect of delays, I'm sure, internally. So it worked out in Nintendo's favor that they hadn't announced a whole lot of release dates officially. So externally, it didn't look like there was necessarily a ton of impact, but I'm sure internally there were massive impacts, such as on Mario's 35th, which hasn't even been announced yet by this point of the year. So, but few days later, a few days after when E3 would have been, or even during when E3 would have been, we did get a Pokemon Presents, and this kind of helped fill the gap a little bit, in which they, I believe Isle Armor, the DLC packs being Isle of Armor and then Crown Tundra later on, but Isle of Armor was released. They showed off more of those. And we also got the announcement of Pokemon Snap! And this came out of freaking nowhere. This is such a cool announcement. I'm a huge fan of Pokemon Snap. I think it's such a novel idea for a game, which it's basically a first-person shooter, but you're using a camera instead of a weapon.
It's still a shooter.
And it was awesome. It's still a shooter, exactly. First person is still shooting, exactly. Perfect. And it's so... And the disappointing thing is, there were other platforms that this would have been perfect on. 3DS would have been cool for it to have been 3D. Wii U would have been absolutely perfect.
Yep.
We had the Wii U gamepad to move it around. But I think the Switch could also be perfect. I mean, I think any platform is perfect. I'll take Pokemon Snap in any form. However, the Switch has the Labo VR camera accessory, which I don't think it's going to happen, but it has to happen. It both won't happen, but needs to happen. Because that was perfect. That is like tailor-made for this game, where you're already on rails, where the whole idea is you're looking around first person. And come on, Nintendo. Pokemon Company, it has to be a thing. In any case, I'm excited for this game. I never thought we would get an update, especially because a few years ago, I forget who it was. One of the like higher ups of Pokemon said, "Well, everyone's got a camera these days. Why make a game around it?" It's like, no, everyone's got a gun in America. We still have shooting games,
right? There's no Pokemon in real life too, so
exactly
don't be dumb.
right.
Don't say that stuff.
Yeah,
but I was also thinking this was one of the best announcements from Nintendo this year, like hands down. Like maybe Hyrule Warriors was technically more exciting, but it's like. We've been waiting for Pokemon Snap sequel for 20 years. Was it 20? Yep. 19? I don't know. It feels like...
just about 20 years.
Exactly. So it's like, the fact that they... Man, I don't even feel like the Pokemon Company knew how big of an announcement it was. Because it wasn't really like some epic reveal of new Pokemon Snap. It was kind of just like, oh, check out this little spin-off game. You might like it, you might not. I don't know. Meanwhile, the internet's just losing their minds the minute they notice it's a new Pokemon Snap. And I'm like, this is just awesome. It's wild. Yeah. It's literally wild because you're going out into the wild to take photos of Pokemon. And I'm really excited for this.
And this continues what you were saying earlier in January about Pokemon Company really like starting to give some love to the older spin-offs that exist.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Like this is perfect for like older fans like myself who like grew up with Pokemon Snap, remember by playing it day of release, having a blast with it for the 3 hours it lasted. I kid. It was a little bit longer if you actually fully played it. But yeah, it's just a game I never expected to see back, and seeing it like look as beautiful as it does on Switch, like especially after the disappointing visuals like Pokemon Sword and Shield. Like Pokemon Snap looks to me like how Pokemon should look. Yeah. And I love how it still fits within the idea of Pokemon. Like you're still trying to capture them all. You're just not doing physically in this game. You're capturing them on film, and it's such a great announcement. Like this is probably the highlight of 2020, at least one of the highlights of 2020 for me. Like the pillars, the thing that saved this year, without it being horrible otherwise. And I'm sure we'll have more to say about that in our discussion. We look forward to what's coming up in 2021. For now, let's go ahead and move on to the next piece of news. Being Super Nintendo World was delayed indefinitely on June 29th due to concerns, of course, about the coronavirus. And I think we all expected it. What's really funny though is Universal had never really given an official release date. They had only ever said they had oddly tethered it to the Summer Olympic Games. They're like, oh yeah, it'll be open by the Summer Olympic Games. And those still haven't happened. So it's hilarious that they never really delayed it. Because it's like, no, it could still release by that point. But yeah, they did finally officially announce, yeah, it's not opening yet. We, of course, now, it was only recently confirmed for release, or the official release was only recently confirmed. So we'll have more to say about that later. So we'll kind of skip over that for now. Finally, though, the big news to end this portion of the year, this half of the year, was the Sakurai Presents MinMin, which... We say that now in hindsight. We didn't know who it was going in. We just knew it was ARMS. And this happened on June 22nd. We had obviously the ARMS fighter finally revealed being MinMin, and she was later released on June 29th. So we already kind of touched on this earlier. I'm not sure how much more there is to say. I think MinMin's really cool. Like,
Yeah.
I really love it when they get fighters in there that feel novel. So whether or not you're an ARMS fan, I think it's cool getting a fighter that plays completely different to the others. MinMin has a wild reach. I mean, we did a whole video with comparing how far across each stage she can reach, and she can reach across the majority of them, I think. Especially if you give her like the power up, the mushroom that makes her bigger, and it's just wild. And it's so cool to have a fighter that plays so true to her character. Like, Sakurai's really good about capturing the essence of these characters. But I feel like MinMin really did feel like MinMin just in a 2D space. Like, had ARMS been a 2D fighter, this would be it. And I thought that was cool.
Yeah,
She's definitely one of the most interesting DLC characters, in my opinion, in terms of what she represents and how well her moveset was made around the original game mechanics. And I really love that.
I'm really impressed just by getting used to so many fighting games where it feels just like clones of other characters. And although we do have some clones in Smash, just to keep creating unique characters, when we're like so many characters into the game, it's nice to see. And maybe it's just at this point with DLC, Sakurai feels free they can take chances. But also with MinMin, I loved. Of course, Captain Falcon eating so many noodles in this trailer.
That was great.
and
they brought back the original voice actor?
Yeah, with him too, and he didn't know what he was doing, and someone said, like, show me your moves or something, and he's like, oh. And just it gives hope for ARMS 2 in the future, too, with this. Like, I would love to see ARMS revisited later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential in ARMS, and I think a fighter appearing in Smash does hopefully bode well for the series, because I think ARMS is a strong like first entry into a fighting game, and I would love to see what they could do, like really building on those mechanics. Because yeah, I revisited it not too long ago. I'm like, oh yeah, this game's really fun. I forgot how fun it was, even though I had a blast with it when it initially released. And yeah, if having her in ARMS brings more attention to it, great. Also good to see another female fighter added to Smash. They can be in short supply, so it was nice to have that, especially given the fact that she's not the face of Smash. It's of course Springman.
Of ARMS.
Of ARMS, yeah. And it's nice though that it's good to see that they're not focusing exclusively on the face character or on the face of a series, especially because MinMin is just objectively a more interesting character than Springman. So
yeah, this was a nice. What I loved about everything surrounding MinMin with the Sakurai Presents and everything, it just felt like a very pleasant experience, I think, compared to other Smash reveals, just because we knew what to expect, or at least we had sort of a framework already in mind where we knew it was going to be an ARMS character, and so within those boundaries, you're only going to get so upset if it's one rather than the other, because the difference is way less drastic between comparing series or franchises or anything like that.
Right.
It's just all characters from the same game, and so everyone was just pretty happy about it, and it was just fun. And obviously, her being such a unique character with her moveset and everything, and so accurately represented was great too. But it was just kind of a nice, fun, casual Smash reveal where it seemed like for the most part everyone kind of agreed that this is great.
except for Joey.
I was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
It's not Twintel. I don't care.
I'm not.
Twintel would have been a good one too.
I'm not sure the competitive community likes her, but I think that's a whole different conversation.
I mean, that's a whole different conversation I'm not really interested in.
Yeah.
At all. I mean, yeah. I mean, any reason why, Tris, though? Is it because
I think Sakurai had even mentioned it in the presentation of a matter of having a character in this kind of game with this amount of reach is very unconventional. And I think it's the kind of game that Smash is. When you have a character that has such incredible reach, it really changes the game.
I would think it's offset or helped balanced by the fact that she's also, largely stationary when she's locked into these moves. But I mean, I don't follow the competitive scene, so I have no idea how it's evolved around it. But yeah, any other thoughts on MinMin here before we wrap up June?
Just happy she's here.
Well, all right. Well, I think with that actually brings us to the end of the first part of 2020. A lot more to discuss than I initially thought going into this. So, yeah, but stay tuned for part 2 coming up, which we'll discuss July to the end of the year, in which we'll have a fair amount of other big things to talk about. So it should be a lot of fun. With that, thank you for watching. Make sure to click that subscribe button and ring that bell for tons more on, everything Nintendo Switch, including as we move into 2021, as we have our discussion for what we're looking forward to in the new year. Again, that'll be coming after part 2 of 2020, though. So yeah, we'll catch you next time. Bye, everyone.